everybody, Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. We continue in our study, if you will. We're looking at the things that God hates. And what I've been trying to establish is to show you how, beginning at the top of the list, which is pride, a prideful look, arrogance, and what have you, how that progressively builds through this list of things that God hates. We're up to number 3. We looked at a proud look. Yesterday we looked at a lying tongue. So we think about the progression of that. Arrogance, I'm untouchable. I can do whatever. Look at me, how great I am. And then the fulfillment of that, of being dishonest. What would be the next progression in that? If there's arrogance there, if there's a willingness to be dishonest there in order to cover up the arrogance, how far is one willing to go? The third thing it tells us in Proverbs that God hates is hands that shed innocent blood. Pride, arrogance, dishonesty, death of someone innocent. If we go back to creation, again, we look at first things first. Where does it start? Where are things born out of? We go back to creation and the story given to us there in Genesis. Cain and Abel, brothers, the offspring of Adam and Eve. Each offers an offering unto God. Cain had an issue with his brother because his brother apparently, at least to him, received greater favor for what he offered than what he did, than what Cain did. So Cain's pride, if you will, he got upset because in his feeling his brother got a little bit more attention. His brother got a little more favor because he gave something better. That's what he estimated. So pride began to build there. And basically what he was saying, now again, this is complete and utter paraphrasing from Pastor Andy, but if you read what it says, here's the attitude presented. Well, at least I did something. Yeah, I know he did more, but at least I did something. Hey, I'm good. I'm good. I took care of it. But then he lied to himself. So we see the pride, a proud look. And then we see the dishonesty because he lied to himself, because he convinced himself of something that wasn't true. He convinced himself that his brother thought he was better than him because he offered something more. He offered a greater giving, a greater offering, a greater sacrifice, whatever, unto God. So the arrogance of the nature that he was feeling allowed the lying tongue to be born. And in this case, there wasn't a whole lot of people to go and tell, so he's lying to himself. That's how the enemy works. Is the enemy working in your life to tell you that you're no good, or get you to buy into the comparison game? Well, so-and-so did this, so you must be a loser. See, that's what was going on here. And so Cain is lying to himself. He's convinced himself that his brother, who again, by what we're told, was not walking around bragging, hey, I did more than you. We don't see that, but that's what he's convinced himself of. God likes him better, whatever. What did that bear? What was born out of that? I'll show him. I'll show him. And innocent blood was shed. Cain took the life of his brother. God hates that. Innocent blood was shed. God gave instruction to Moses to give to all, thou shalt not kill. We live in a time right now, in this modern culture, modern age, what have you, that life has very little value. Very little. For those that are prideful, arrogant, for those that are prideful, arrogant, dishonest, because again, one gives birth to the other. Oftentimes we see those in that particular mindset have the attitude that life has little to no value, regardless of who it is. There are none more innocent, none, than little children, both the born and the unborn. And I'm not going to retract that because that's just true. There's nothing more innocent than that. However, we live in a time to where those who have been lifted to places of authority or leadership take on the notion that they need to determine the definition of life. That they somehow now have the authority, pride, lying tongue, innocent blood. You see how it works? I've got the authority to determine what is life, when it begins, and when it should end, which is our other vulnerable, our other innocent, the elderly. I mean, they face the same set of circumstances oftentimes as the innocent children because they're seen as expendable. We know the arguments today, the rules, the laws, the whatever of, well, it's not born yet, so we can get rid of it. Well, grandma's old. She produces nothing. She can't work. She's, not paying enough taxes. She's not contributing to society. Maybe grandma needs to go. God hates that. God hates that. Because God is pro-life. Now, before anybody gets their political hackles up, that's not what I'm talking about. We're not going to go down that road, although we could, within the confines of this very thing that God hates, the shedding of innocent blood. However, that statement, again, is not a political statement or a policy or a political party. God is pro-life because God created life. Therefore, He supports life. He designed it. He gave breath to it. It tells us in the book of Genesis, He breathed the breath of life into the clay form that will ultimately become Adam. And as that clay form came to life and began to breathe, it would go on and reproduce. And life continues to this day. For it said in the book of Genesis, let us create mankind in our image, both male and female. Go forth, be fruitful, and multiply. You see, friends, life is precious to God. Life is precious to God. The shedding of innocent blood, there's really a multitude of words we could use to describe that, but in one singular word, the shedding of innocent blood it's awful. It's just awful. We hear about it all the time. Again, we talked about yesterday, things we become conditioned to accept as normal or as just whatever. But this should never fall into that category. And unfortunately, it has, because we're inundated with it every single day. Oh, we've had a terrible shooting at so and so school. So and so many people, 50 people, 20 people have been killed in a certain particular major city in America. Whatever, going to the next story. You see how that works? You see how we easily become conditioned through pride and arrogance, whatever, the lying tongue. It's just what it is. The innocent blood is no longer seen as innocent because it doesn't matter. The innocent child that's been killed in a drive-by, the home invasion that took an elderly person's life, students sitting in a classroom, people attending an event, a movie, a concert, whatever, someone just trying to cross the street to get home, war-torn countries where people are just mowed down. There was a video floating around this past week, censored on some platforms, blocked out on others with the little eye gimmick on it. You could click and watch it if you wanted to, but it said sensitive content, whatever the case. And here's the title of it: Everyday Life in South America, I think it was, or something like that. And it was just a couple of people standing on the corner of the street talking to one another right outside of a building. Maybe it was a business, I'm not sure. And some other people just walked up to them and shot them. Took whatever they had and went away. Or it was something along those lines. But my point is, that's what you do every day. It's not uncommon, the shedding of innocent blood. Friends, that's terrible. It's awful. We see the normalizing of this, the desensitizing of this within the confines of not only media and social media and just the continual, non-ending stories, repetitive stories and what have you that we hear every day. Again, all the things that I've listed, all these different types of tragic events. And while there's minimal emotion sometimes shown in that moment, it's just part of the loop. State it and go on. But what you don't hear, as awful and tragic of those stories, is you don't hear about the innocence that has been involved in that. You certainly don't hear about the thousands of babies that lost their life every day. You don't hear about any of these different things. The shedding of innocent blood is terrible. It's tragic. It's unproductive. It's fruitless. And if we find its base, if we find its core, it's pride and dishonesty. Because I'm better than you. You don't deserve to live. I do. I don't care if you do. Friends, there's been interviews. Again, these are not conspiratorial things. These are not just, radical, crazy, what they call it now, tinfoil hat. There are people, we go back to our lesson read last week, spiritual wickedness in high places. There are CEOs of pharmaceutical companies. There are business executives. There are high political figures who sit on a stage with a camera rolling, looking into that camera, listening to that interviewer, that are allowing the words to come out of their mouth. There are too many people. We need to reduce that. There's too much population. We need to cut that down. You don't get to decide that. We don't get to determine that. The shedding of innocent blood. God hates that. The Bible tells us that God desires that none should perish. Death is a natural fact of life that comes after the fall. Again, we go back to the beginning. How did we get here? The fall of Adam and Eve. That's where it came from, which came from the pride of Satan, the lie that he told them, you don't have to listen to God, which led to the shedding of innocent blood, and we'll continue on through the list. As God says, I desire that none should perish. Of course, this speaks about eternity and his desire, excuse me, to spend eternity with all who want to be there. But pride gets in the way. Arrogance gets in the way. Deceit and lies. It all steps in. And what we see is the steamroll kind of picks up enormous power because the enemy is running rampant and he's creating havoc everywhere. But what he's creating is this false thing. We get back to the lying tongue, that it doesn't matter. Oh, well, it's just another person gone. Oh, well, it's just another baby that didn't get born. Oh, well, just another old person that doesn't matter. Innocent blood is shed every day, bar none, 7 days a week. God hates that. It goes back to what I said in lesson 1. God hates that because it hurts his children. Emotionally, physically, every type of way. It hurts his children. And if it hurts his children, it hurts him. But what is our greatest example? What okay, you've given us all the statistical things and the things that we know about and even things that aren't even comfortable to talk about. What is our greatest example? Jesus. The innocent lamb, if you will. The sinless Savior. I want us to think about this. Because of the prideful heart, the arrogance, the prideful look, all this different stuff, because of that, of those in charge at that time, because of the lying tongue, we look back and we're going to teach on this, that the trial of Jesus, it tells us clearly people were paid to come and lie. He didn't do anything, but people were paid because those in charge were arrogant. I don't want anybody to question my authority. Therefore, I've got to stop something. So I'm going to tell something that's not true. I'm going to make up something that's not true. I'm going to pay people to enable that story, and innocent blood is going to be shed. Think about that. The first 3 things that God hates fall right in line, one bearing the other. But here's what happened. Jesus knew, obviously, what was happening. And he knew that it had to happen to expose it. Sometimes the worst of things have to be exposed in order for it to be fixed. It's like an internal problem. Sometimes it has to be exposed. One's opened up, if you will. I don't want to get graphic, in order to remove whatever that issue is. Jesus faced these arrogant ones, these lying ones, and they were defeated. They were defeated at the cross. The enemy was defeated at the cross. The things that God hates, he faced and he defeated, so they would no longer have power over me and you. I want you to think about that. God stepped in as our advocate, and he took care of the very things that he hates so that we would have power over them. That means we have choice in what we do, that we have choice in what we say. And the more that we realize this, the more we begin to be aware of what we allow in our lives, then the stronger our relationship with Christ becomes. God hates sin. And again, that word is not appropriately taught. Sin is missing the mark. Sin is missing the mark of God. The mark of God is holiness when we participate in something that doesn't represent Him, because we're made in His image. When we participate in something that separates us from Him, not Him being leaving nor forsaking, but taking us in a different direction. He hates that. But He never hates you. He never hates the sinner. He never hates me, regardless of the choices that we make. He never leaves us. He never forsakes us. That's a promise from God, and God can't break His promise. But when pride comes in, when the lying tongue comes in, when the willingness to shed innocent blood, all of these things, when they begin to compile, when they work, we allow those things, and they create a distance, which creates another lie. Because then one can be convinced, because the enemy's whispering in the ear, oh, you're done. Like the prodigal son, you're in the hog pen forever, you're finished. Oftentimes we embrace that lie. We hold on to that lie that it can't be fixed. But friends, let me tell you something today. I don't know where you are. I don't know what's going on in your life. But when Jesus went to the cross and He nailed it all to the cross, it was taken care of. That debt was paid in full. When we ask, we shall receive. When we get serious about a relationship with God, we can enter into that. We can be forgiven. We are forgiven when we come to Christ. It's a clean slate. It's a do-over, a U-turn. We all have stuff. Every single one of us have stuff in our life, or have had stuff in our life, that God hates. Whether it's a lying tongue, maybe you've shed innocent blood. You say, well, I've never killed anybody, Pastor. The definition of murder, according to the Bible, includes reputation, includes slander and gossip, and so on and so on. Have you hurt someone's life? Have you destroyed someone's life? Have you shed innocent blood in the public specter? Many people do it every day in front of one of these gimmicks on social media. They tear people's lives apart, true and untrue. If we have things in our life that God hates, it's time to get rid of it. It's time to remove it. Because when we recognize it is there, it's like walking on a nail in the bottom of your shoe. Every time it pokes you is a reminder, I'm here. And once you know that it's there, it's your responsibility to pull it out. It's your responsibility to get rid of it. See, we can receive the life that He offers us, and we can live that life in the way that He intended for us to live. A prideful look, a lying tongue, the shedding of innocent blood are the first three things that we see that God hates. Lord willing, the second half of this will begin tomorrow, and we'll go into the next 4 things, ultimately be 7 things that God hates. And what I want us to be able to do is see this from a very clear perspective. That is why I'm taking one item per day and looking at it so that we understand this is not like we oftentimes say in our culture, in our language of hating something as a dislike because of a personal preference. That's not what this is about. This is not about a color or a pattern or whether it's loud or whether it's quiet or whether it tastes good. This is about the result. This is about the result. And if it harms His children, God hates it. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.